Japan built the greatest carrier-based fighter on the planet in 1940, the Zero. A machine so dominant that Allied pilots were told not to engage it in a turning fight, ever. So what did Japan do next? They tried to build something better. They threw millions of dollars, their best engineer, and years of irreplaceable wartime production at a single aircraft, the Mitsubishi A7M Reppu. The strong wind. It never fired a single shot in combat. Not because it was bad, the opposite. When it finally flew, with the right engine, Japan's most decorated living ace climbed out of the cockpit and said it could fly circles around the F6F Hellcat while climbing. So what went wrong? Everything. And almost none of it was Jiro Horikoshi's fault. This is the story of the $10 million mistake, the most expensive, most avoidable failure in the history of Japanese naval aviation. Here's the problem with designing a perfect aircraft. Perfection has no room to grow. The A6M was perfect for 1940. Horikoshi's team had stripped every gram of unnecessary weight to give it range and agility that no other carrier fighter could match. No armor plating for the pilot, no self-sealing fuel tanks. Just raw, obsessive aerodynamic efficiency. That worked brilliantly, right up until Allied engineers started studying captured Zeros and realized exactly what Japan had traded away. By 1942, the F4U Corsair and F6F Hellcat were entering service specifically designed to kill the Zero. Heavier, faster in a dive, built to absorb punishment that would turn a Zero into a fireball. Horikoshi knew this was coming before the Americans did. He and the Mitsubishi design team recognized by late 1940 that the Zero's lightweight construction made meaningful upgrades impossible. You can't bolt armor onto an airframe designed around not having any. The math doesn't work. So the Imperial Japanese Navy issued the 16 Shu specification, a formal requirement for a Zero replacement. This was 1940. Pearl Harbor hadn't happened yet. Japan was winning, and they were already planning the next generation. That's the part that makes this story so painful. Japan saw the problem early. They had time, and they still ran out of it. By July 1942, the Navy upgraded the requirement to the 17 Shuko specification, and what they asked for was, by every aerodynamic principle, Horikoshi understood, a contradiction. They wanted a maximum speed of 397 miles per hour at altitude. They wanted to climb to nearly 20,000 feet in under 6 minutes. They wanted it to carry heavier guns, two 20mm cannons, and two 13.2mm machine guns. They wanted pilot armor, self-sealing tanks, and then, this is the part that made Horikoshi's team stare at the numbers in silence. They wanted it to be as maneuverable as the Zero. Here is the engineering problem. Speed requires power. Power requires a big engine. A big engine is heavy. Heavy aircraft need bigger wings to stay maneuverable. Bigger wings create drag. Drag kills speed. So to hit the speed target, you need more power, which means a heavier engine, which means bigger wings, which means more drag. This is called a design spiral, and Horikoshi had walked straight into one. The A7M that emerged from this requirement was enormous by Japanese standards. Wingspan of nearly 46 feet, 10 feet wider than the Zero. Wing area 50% larger. It was a fundamentally different class of aircraft. And the single most important decision in the entire program, the one that would determine whether it succeeded or failed, was which engine went in the nose. Horikoshi had a clear answer. The Navy had a different one, and that disagreement would cost Japan a year it didn't have. Jiro Horikoshi ran the numbers. He ran them again. The conclusion was the same every time. The only engine that could move the heavy A7M airframe fast enough to meet the 17 Shu requirements was Mitsubishi's own Mk9, the HA-43, an 18-cylinder radial producing 2,200 horsepower, still in development, but with the displacement and altitude performance the job demanded. The Navy said no. The Koku Honbu, the Navy's Bureau of Aeronautics, wanted the Nakajima Homar engine instead. The Homar was also an 18-cylinder radial, also rated at 2,000 horsepower on paper, and crucially, it was already being used in other programs. The Key 84 Frank, the N1K-J George. Standardizing around one engine, simplified logistics, simplified production, simplified the supply chain. It was a reasonable argument. It was also wrong. Horikoshi told them the Homar would degrade badly at altitude, that its real-world power delivery at 20,000 feet would fall well short of its rated figures. He told them the engine was physically too small for the airframe he was building. He put his objections in writing. The Navy issued a formal directive anyway. In 1943, Mitsubishi was ordered to install the Nakajima engine in the first prototypes. This decision added nearly a year to the program. The Mitsubishi team had to redesign the engine mount, the cooling system, the entire nose section for an engine their chief designer had told them wouldn't work. To his credit, Horikoshi didn't just comply and wait to be proven right. He quietly kept a parallel team working on the HA-43 installation on his own initiative, just in case he was going to need it. May 6, 1944, the first A7M prototype takes off from the Mitsubishi airfield in Nagoya. The handling was excellent. The aircraft was stable, responsive. Everything Horikoshi's design work had promised. The airframe was not the problem. The engine was the problem. Exactly as predicted. At altitude, the Homar failed to deliver. The A7M hit a maximum speed of 373 miles per hour, 24 miles per hour short of the requirement. Its climb to 20,000 feet took nearly 10 minutes against a 6-minute target. For all the years of work, all the resources consumed, all the man-hours diverted from aircraft already in production, the A7M was no faster than the A6M50 it was supposed to replace. On July 30th, 1944, the Navy canceled the A7M program. 2 weeks later, they uncanceled it, because by then, Horikoshi's parallel team had quietly been fitting the HA-43 engine into the 6th A7M airframe. The Navy, desperate for anything that could stop the B-29s now systematically dismantling Japanese cities, reversed course and authorized the re-engined version to continue. One canceled program restarted with the engine the designer had asked for 2 years earlier. The clock was still ticking. October 13, 1944. The A7M flies for the first time. The difference was immediate and total. With the Mitsubishi HA-43 producing its full 2,200 horsepower, the Reppu finally became what it was always supposed to be. Top speed of 390 miles per hour. Climbed to 20,000 feet in just over 6 minutes. The numbers Horikoshi had promised in 1942. Delivered in late 1944. But the specification table doesn't capture what really made the A7M dangerous. It was the automatic combat flaps. Originally developed by Kawanishi for the N1K-J George, these weren't flaps the pilot deployed manually. A bellows system sensed airspeed and G-load in real time and automatically extended the flaps during hard turns, generating additional lift exactly when the pilot needed it most, without any input, without any distraction, without losing a fraction of a second at the moment when fractions of a second decided who came home. The result was an aircraft that flew like something considerably smaller and lighter than it actually was. And the man who confirmed that assessment wasn't a Mitsubishi test pilot with a vested interest in good news. It was Saburo Sakai, Japan's greatest living ace, a pilot who had accumulated more real-world combat hours against Allied fighters than almost anyone in any air force. Sakai flew the A7M and climbed out saying it could outmaneuver the F6F Hellcat, that it could fly circles around it while climbing, that it was the finest aircraft he had ever flown. The Navy ordered immediate production. Mitsubishi's Nagoya and Osaka plants were to be retooled. The Reppu was finally going to war. Then December arrived. 10 days. That's how long it took for Japan's last hope of meaningful air superiority to be destroyed. December 7th, 1944. 3 years to the day after Pearl Harbor. A magnitude 8.0 earthquake. The Tonankai earthquake strikes the southeast coast of Japan. The epicenter is close enough to Nagoya that the shockwave tears through Mitsubishi's manufacturing corridor. Foundations crack. Precision machinery shifts off its mounting. Production jigs for the HA-43 engine, the tooling it had taken years to develop and set up, are destroyed. Over 1,200 people are killed. More than 20,000 buildings collapse. Horikoshi was in Tokyo for a conference when it hit. He rushed back to Nagoya to find his factory in ruins. 6 days later, December 13, B-29 super fortresses from the Mariana Islands hit the Mitsubishi Daiko engine works, the facility responsible for HA-43 production. Extensive damage. 5 days after that, December 18th, the B-29s come back and finish the job. Earthquake, air raid again. 10 days. The production tooling for the only engine that could power the only fighter that could meaningfully contest Allied air superiority over Japan, gone. Look at what this timing means. The A7M had just proven itself in October. The Navy had just ordered production in November. The infrastructure to build it in numbers was finally in place. And then 10 days in December destroyed it all with a completeness that no strategic planning could have anticipated. By the end of the war, 9 A7M airframes had been completed in total. 3 were destroyed by American bombing raids. 1 was lost in a test flight accident. 3 survived to be captured by Allied intelligence. 1 production standard, A7M was completed in 1945 and never flew a combat mission. The Allied Technical Air Intelligence Center examined the surviving prototypes and confirmed what Sakai had said. The A7M was a genuinely dangerous aircraft. They also noted correctly that it had arrived too late to change anything. Even as the Nagoya plants burned, Mitsubishi's engineers kept drawing. The A7M was to be a land-based variant with a supercharged Ha-43 producing 2,250 horsepower and 6 wing-mounted 20mm cannons, making it one of the most heavily armed piston fighters ever designed. First prototype expected December 1945. Work never progressed past the structural phase. The A7M 3J Reppu was the ultimate evolution, a turbo-supercharged Ha-43 with an intercooler, 4 30mm cannons in the wings, 2 more 30mm cannons firing obliquely upward from the fuselage, designed specifically for attacking B-29s from below, where the massive bombers had limited defensive coverage. Projected top speed of 403 miles per hour at 32,000 feet, the only Japanese fighter design that could have consistently engaged B-29s at their actual operating altitude rather than struggling to reach them. A full-scale mock-up was built in early 1945. No prototype was ever constructed. The industrial base that would have built it no longer existed. These weren't fantasies. They were fully engineered designs from the team that had already delivered the A7M. In a different industrial context, in a country that wasn't being systematically destroyed from the air and fractured by earthquakes, these aircraft would have been built. Whether they would have been enough is a different question, but they would have been built. $10 million. In 1945 money. That's the figure historians use to represent what the A7M program cost Japan. Not just the direct expenditure, but the opportunity cost. The high-grade steel, the skilled machinists, the engineering hour, the production capacity redirected from aircraft that were already working toward an aircraft that wasn't working yet. How much of this was avoidable? The engine decision, completely avoidable. Horikoshi was right about the Homar from the beginning. If the Navy had listened in 1942 instead of 1944, the A7M could have been in mass production by early 1944. Not 9 prototypes, hundreds of aircraft. That version of the timeline doesn't change the outcome of the war. American industrial capacity was simply too vast, but it makes the air defense of Japan in 1944 and 1945 a significantly more costly proposition for the USAAF. The earthquake and the bombing, not avoidable. No amount of better decision-making in 1942 protects a factory in Nagoya from a magnitude 8.0 earthquake on December 7, 1944. Though it's worth noting that Japan's industrial centralization, concentrating so much critical production in a single geographic corridor, made the program uniquely vulnerable to exactly this kind of catastrophic disruption. The pilot shortage, not avoidable by 1944. By the time the A7M was ready, the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service had burned through its experienced pilot corps. Saburo Sakai was a miracle of survival. His peers were dead. The pilots available to fly the Reppu into combat were men with dozens of flight hours facing Americans with thousands. The most advanced fighter is only as good as the hands that fly it. The deeper mistake, the one that set everything else in motion, was the delay between 1940 and 1942. Japan had the zero. Japan was winning. And inside that success, there was no urgency. The 16 Shu specification issued in 1940 was allowed to drift. Horikoshi was stretched across multiple programs simultaneously. Resources went to refining the current aircraft rather than developing the next one. By the time Japan understood the urgency, the window for the A7M was already closing. Here's the strangest postscript to this story. In 2025, reports emerged that Japan's Ministry of Defense was considering naming its 6th generation fighter, the aircraft being developed under the Global Combat Air Program alongside the UK and Italy, the Reppu. A direct revival of the A7M's name for Japan's most ambitious military aviation project in decades. The choice is controversial precisely because of what the name represents. Not victory, not dominance. A magnificent aircraft that never got its chance. A program that was strangled by bureaucracy, bad decisions, natural disaster, and strategic bombing before it could show what it was capable of. Some argue that's exactly why the name is appropriate. The original Reppu was brilliant engineering defeated by a broken system. And Japan's modern defense industry, building a genuinely cutting-edge aircraft under its own sovereign development program for the first time in 80 years, sees something worth reclaiming in that story. Whether the name is officially adopted or not, the symbolism is striking. The aircraft that never flew in combat may yet give its name to one that does. Jiro Horikoshi died in 1982. He lived to see Japan rebuild. He lived to see his story told in books and documentaries. He never saw his final wartime design go to war. The strong wind never blew. But 80 years later, the name still carries weight. The Mitsubishi A7M Reppu is not a story about a bad aircraft. It's a story about a great aircraft that never got the conditions it needed to exist. The engineering was sound. Horikoshi's instincts were correct at every decision point that mattered. The A7M, when it finally flew flew with the right engine, delivered exactly what he had promised 2 years earlier. What failed around it was everything else. A Navy bureaucracy that overruled its own best engineer out of institutional caution. A wartime industrial base too fragile to absorb the shocks of earthquake and strategic bombing. A pilot training pipeline that had been destroyed by the same attrition the Reppu was built to stop. And at the foundation of all of it, a timeline that started too late and kept slipping. 10 prototypes, 9 completed, 1 production aircraft, 0 combat sorties. The most expensive mistake in the history of Japanese naval aviation wasn't building the A7M. It was building it in the wrong order, fighting the wrong battles, making the wrong calls, spending 2 years proving that Horikoshi was right when they should have just trusted him from the start. The strong wind came too late, and the storm it was built to stop had already arrived.